Yippee-yay, there'll be no wedding bells.
Hi guys, and welcome to the New Vegas Mod Clinic, part 17. Now in my current playthrough of Fallout New Vegas, I am going for a very harsh and realistic feel to the game. I don't want it to feel like a game, I want it to feel like a harsh post-apocalyptic wasteland. I want fights to be brutal, I want them to be dangerous. And the game by itself really does not provide that level of difficulty. And that's where the first mod I'm going to show you steps up and delivers. The mod is actually called Realistic Weapons Damage. But in actual fact, it's actually misnamed in a way. It doesn't actually change the weapon's damage at all. Which is actually a good thing, because if it did, it would require compatibility patches for every mod that added new weapons. What it does instead is it changes the way you take damage and the way your enemies take damage. So, if I shoot Veronica in the arms, she takes normal damage. So if I shoot her for 30 damage, she takes 30 damage. Same is true on the legs. However, if I shoot her in the chest, she takes 2.5 times that damage. So, again, if I shoot her for 30 points in the chest, she actually takes 75 points of damage, and that's without a critical. If I get a critical, and it's, for example, if that weapon doubles the damage, she's going to take 150 in the chest. As you can see, this is far more dangerous. 2 or 3 shots in the chest, almost no one can survive unless they've got good armor. And even 1 or 2 shots can be absolutely deadly, as they pretty much should be. If I shoot her in the head, she takes 4 times damage. So she would take 120 points of damage even without a critical if she does not have armor. So 2 shots to the head will pretty much kill her, will pretty much kill most people. Obviously, this is going to depend on the difficulty you're playing at and what mods you have, but for example, my character has 150 health. That means if I take a single shot of, say, a 40 damage weapon to the head, a decent rifle shot to the head, it's probably going to kill me. Even a weak rifle, like a varmint rifle, if it shoots me in the head and gets a critical, I'm going to die. But that is not all that it changes. It changes how much damage each area can take before being crippled, and it reduces it by a huge amount, and I do mean a huge amount. You know when you've been getting shot in the leg and you've taken 6 and 7 bullets and you're still walking just fine? Well, not with this mod. If you get shot in the leg, twice, the chances are you're going to be limping unless you're wearing really good armor. Being shot in the leg a couple of times is going to make you run slowly. Being shot in the arm once or twice, probably going to make aiming a little difficult. If you get shot in the head and you survive, remember it does 4 times as much damage, you are almost certainly going to have a head injury that needs medical attention. In fact, if you get into a fight and take 2 or 3 bullets, at the end of that fight, you're not just going to take a stim pack and walk away. You're going to need to use a doctor's bag, you're going to need to use something like Hydra, or you're going to need to find a doctor. Oh, and if you do get crippled legs, it actually makes you run slower than default as well, so being shot in the legs becomes doubly painful with this mod installed. So, what effect does this actually have on combat? Well, the first thing it does is it makes it faster and more brutal. Basically, if you shoot someone with a rifle, the chances are they're going to die. However, of course, the same is true of you. If you get the drop on your enemies, you're probably going to kill them pretty quick. If they get the drop on you, well, let's just say being ambushed by turrets is not a pleasant experience. In fact, being ambushed by a single person 200 meters away who gets the drop on you with a rifle, it's probably going to be a terminal experience.
Oh!
And this will change the way you play quite dramatically. Instead of running around the wasteland as if it was an amusement park, you're going to be moving carefully. You're going to stop every now and again, take out your binoculars and search the distant terrain. You're going to be looking for signs of movement, enemies, ambush, and so on before you carry on. You're going to probably move in short spurts, perhaps moving 300 or 400 meters, finding cover, and then scanning ahead once more just to make sure there isn't something waiting for you. And you may find yourself seeking out the company of other travellers just to be safe. Merchants, for example, are a great way to travel safely. A little slow, but if you get ambushed, they could be the difference between life and death. And in general, it just changes the way you approach combat. You're going to be using cover, you're going to be shooting from around the sides of rocks so you can duck right behind, especially when reloading. You really are going to have to make each shot count. If you've got multiple opponents, you might want to aim for the weaker ones first, just to get them down. They may be weak, but one bullet could end it for you. So the more people standing, the more chances there are of you dying. If you are a character that likes to run in with a melee weapon, you are going to have to rethink that, I'm afraid, unless you are wearing some severely good armor. Running 30 meters whilst 4 people pepper you with bullets is not a healthy option. You can still do melee, but it's probably going to be against creatures that do not have guns, or when you have the element of surprise, or again, if you are good at using cover, if you can sprint from rock to rock and then get right in your enemy's face. Now, the mod does change one value I noticed for melee when in VATS. And I'm assuming it's for VATS because when in VATS, you cannot aim for a body limb. So what this value does is it multiplies the amount of extra damage you do due to strength by a huge amount. So I'm assuming it's for VATS only, because I actually think that out of VATS, you can still injure people's...
I'm gonna need some new limbs.
Whereas in VATS, you can't. So, but in VATS, you will do a lot more damage, especially if your strength is high. The mod also changes explosions, makes them a little tougher. It tends to make you fall over. You get knocked down far more often. However, you should note if you're using Eve and you use the boss load order, it places Eve below this mod, and Eve changes the explosions as well, and Eve will probably win. In general, this mod makes firefights far faster, far more brutal, and something you take seriously. Even if you play very carefully, you're going to make the odd mistake, and when you do, with this mod installed, it punishes you. You're probably going to die a little bit more than you are comfortable with, even if you play utterly paranoid as I do. It seems pretty much compatible with everything, including Project Nevada. And honestly, if you really do want a hardcore, difficult experience, this may be a mod that is worth putting in your load order. But don't say I didn't warn you. Now, the next mod I'm going to show you is one I pretty much always have in my load order and have for quite some time actually. It is a mod that adds all the missing ammo recipes. Have you ever wondered why, even if you take all the right perks like hand loader, there are several ammo types that you find in the wasteland that you cannot make? It's really annoying. Well, with this mod, you can actually make all of the ammo types as long as you have the right perk. You need the hand loader perk, and you need fairly high repair as well. So this is aimed at people who, are, playing a gunsmith type character as I am, and it allows you to make just about in fact I think every type of ammo there is in the game if you have the right materials, and break down those ammo types as well. There is not really a lot else to tell you about this mod. It does exactly what it says on the tin. Another mod that is worth mentioning quickly is ammo ingredients as loot. Have you ever wondered why you apparently are the only person who has powders, primers and so on, that you never find them anywhere? Well, this mod just adds them to the game. There is a small chance of finding primers and powder as normal loot, which seems perfectly reasonable. So again, if you are into making your own ammo, this is kind of a useful mod to have. And the last mod I'm going to show you, I am also going to show you while stood in front of my workbench. This mod is called Alternative Repair, and it tries to enhance the repair system. The vanilla repair system is a little basic and sometimes kind of annoying. You know, you use hunting rifles to repair other hunting rifles and so on. Unless you've got the right perks, that is pretty much the only way to do it. And there are also weapon repair kits that let you repair the currently held weapon. Now, those can be crafted reasonably easily, but you do need quite a lot of different components. And this mod tries to make it so that you can use more readily accessible components to create very specific parts. So for example, you could make replacement pistol parts out of scrap metal and nothing but scrap metal. So I could just create 2 of those, and that's like 2 weapon repair kits, but just for pistols. Now I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, yes, but scrap metal's even more rare than hammers and wrenches and whatever else it is you need for a weapon repair kit. Well, that is not true when you've got this mod installed, because this mod allows you to break down a lot of items you find in the game. So for example, cameras, paint guns, vacuum cleaners. And not only do you get scrap metal, but you can also get sensor modules or scrap electronics and use those to create these repair kits. So for example, if I break down this vacuum cleaner here, I get 2 pieces of scrap metal and a sensor module, which I can then use to create repair parts. To use these replacement parts, just go along to whatever it is you want to repair, click on repair, and you will now have the replacement rifle part as an option. And there you go. You can still actually make the weapon repair kits, but honestly, they're not really worth it with the amount of parts you have to use. Not just the scrap metal, you need to use wrenches, wonder glue, scrap electronics and duct tape. And duct tape is actually useful all by itself now. There are some weapons that will actually allow you to use duct tape or even wonder glue to fix them. Not all weapons, but some. So things like wonder glue and duct tape are very useful by themselves, so you don't want to use them in your weapon repair kits when you can make replacement parts instead. And another cool feature of the mod is the ability to scavenge motorcycles for parts. You do need high repair and you do need to be carrying a wrench, but you can scavenge motorcycles for parts and get, there you go, handbrakes and gas tanks, for example. And you can also make things like cloth patches or patches for leather armor and even metal patches for the heavier armors. The leather patches, for example, you build at a campfire or at a stove if that also allows you to cook. It does use the repair skill though, but it uses things like gecko hides, dog hides, knives and so on. You can find a complete list of the things that you can make and the items that you can break down on the website. It's pretty easy to follow. But in general, even though this looks like it makes repairing a little bit more complicated, it actually makes it painless. You can repair with far more items. It's a lot easier to keep your gear repaired as long as you don't mind scavenging. And it makes scavenging a little bit more productive as well, seeing as you can take things like cameras and toasters and break them down into scrap metal. And it also removes one of the more annoying aspects of this game, and that is the fact that scrap metal is probably one of the most valuable things in the game in many ways. I end up hoarding scrap metal because, you know, more than anything else, I'll drop expensive items just to keep scrap metal because it's useful for so many things. Well, This mod makes that a little less essential. I can find so many things that I can break down into scrap metal that, you know, I could take that nice weapon instead of those 7 scrap metals that I find. I've only been using this mod for a few hours, but so far I'm really liking it. Okay guys, that is about it for this video. I will of course be bringing you another New Vegas mod clinic next week, and you are more than welcome to join me for that. I of course am making many other videos before that, so feel free to join me on any of those. Whichever video you decide to join me for, I look forward to seeing you guys there, and until then, as always, have fun.
Glad you're single.
Jingle jangle.
And that song ain't so very far from wrong.